Hey guys, tonight we begin with swinging doors, stale whiskey, and the faint possibility you'd leave with fewer teeth than you walked in with. Visiting a Wild West saloon. You've seen it in the movies, rowdy cowboys belling up to the bar, piano music tinkling in the background, card games that end in dramatic shootouts at high noon. Sounds thrilling, right? Wrong. The reality was warm beer that tasted like regret, floors sticky with tobacco spit and God knows what else, and the constant awareness that the guy next to you might be 3 drinks away from pulling a gun over absolutely nothing. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely enjoying what we're doing here, and drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now let's step through those swinging doors together. You've just ridden into town after 3 days on the trail. You're covered in dust so thick it's become a second skin. Your throat feels like you've been gargling sandpaper, and every muscle in your body is screaming from hours in the saddle. The saloon is right there on the main street, maybe the only 2-story building in this collection of wooden shacks, optimistically called a town. Those iconic swinging doors don't lock, don't fully close, and definitely don't keep the dust out. But they do one thing perfectly. They announce every arrival with a distinctive creak that makes everyone inside look up to see if you're friend, foe, or someone they owe money. You push through, and the first thing that hits you isn't the piano music or friendly greetings. It's the smell. A thick, humid assault on your nostrils that's equal parts tobacco smoke, unwashed bodies, spilled alcohol, wet wood, and horse manure tracked in on 100 boots. Some saloons have sawdust on the floor to soak up the spills and spit. Others just have dirt, occasionally swept, more often not. The air is hazy with pipe and cigar smoke, hanging in lazy clouds near the ceiling like fog that gave up trying to escape. Your eyes adjust to the dim interior. Most saloons have small windows, if any, because glass is expensive and drunk cowboys have poor aim when throwing things. What light there is comes from oil lamps, candles, or if you're lucky, a few grimy windows letting in shafts of dusty sunlight. The walls are rough-cut lumber, maybe decorated with a painting of a woman in various states of undress, a calendar that's 3 years out of date, or a mirror behind the bar that's seen better decades. And there, running along one wall, is the bar itself. A long wooden counter, scarred and stained, where men lean like it's the only thing keeping them vertical. Behind it, the barkeep, usually armed, always watching, occasionally friendly, but never naive. This is his kingdom, and everyone knows it. Welcome to the saloon. You're not going to like everything you find here, but you're probably staying anyway. The bar is the heart of the saloon, and the barkeep is its pulse. He's not your friend, though he might act like it. He's a businessman operating in a world where his customers are armed, often drunk, and occasionally wanted by the law. His job is to pour drinks, keep order, and survive another day without getting shot, robbed, or stuck with a tab nobody pays. Most barkeeps are middle-aged men who've seen it all and developed the emotional range of a brick wall. Nothing surprises them. A man pulls a gun, they've seen it. Someone passes out face first in their own drink. Tuesday, a fight breaks out over a card game. They'll wait until furniture starts breaking before stepping in, and even then, it's with a shotgun kept under the bar for exactly these occasions. The bar itself is functional, not fancy. It's made of whatever wood was available, usually scarred with knife marks, burns from carelessly placed cigars, and stains from every liquid known to man. There's no bartender flair here, no cocktail shakers, or fancy glassware. The barkeep pours straight from the bottle into a glass that may or may not have been rinsed since the last customer. If you're lucky, he wipes it with a rag first. If you're unlucky, you learn not to look too closely at what you're drinking from. Behind the bar, bottles line the shelves. Most aren't labelled with anything recognisable. Some are actual whiskey, Others are whiskey, locally made rotgut that's been coloured with tobacco juice, flavoured with burnt sugar, and diluted with whatever water source the owner trusts least. The good stuff, if it exists, is kept for regulars or sold at prices that make cowboys weep into their empty pockets. The barkeep controls everything. He decides who gets served and who gets cut off. He breaks up fights or lets them play out, depending on his mood and the participants. He extends credit to men he trusts and laughs in the faces of men he doesn't. He knows everyone's business, hears every secret slurred over the third drink, and keeps most of it to himself because loose lips in a frontier town can get you killed just as fast as a quick draw. And if you think you can skip out on your tab, think again. That shotgun under the bar isn't decorative, and the barkeep has friends. Big friends, mean friends, friends who don't mind dragging you into the street and making an example out of you. So when you belly up to that bar, you treat the man behind it with respect. Not because you like him, but because in this room, he's the closest thing to law and order you're going to find. Let's talk about what you're actually drinking, because calling it whiskey is generous. In the Wild West, alcohol was less about quality and more about availability and strength. If it burned going down and made you forget your troubles for a few hours, it did its job. Most saloon whiskey started life as grain alcohol, corn, rye, whatever was cheap and accessible. It was distilled quickly, often by amateurs in makeshift stills, and aged for approximately 0 minutes before being poured into barrels and shipped west. This raw alcohol was harsh, bitter, and sometimes dangerous. To make it palatable, or at least drinkable, saloon owners cut it with water, added burnt sugar or molasses for colour, tossed in some tobacco for flavour, and occasionally threw in chili peppers, turpentine, or other substances we won't discuss because you're trying to enjoy this. The result was a liquid that could strip paint, kill bacteria, and occasionally blind you if the distiller got the methanol ratio wrong. Cowboys called it by dozens of names: rotgut, tarantula juice, coffin varnish, snakehead whiskey, and 40 rod, because it could kill you at 40 rods distance. These weren't affectionate nicknames, they were warnings. You didn't sip this whiskey, you threw it back in one quick motion, grimaced, and chased it with water or beer if you were smart. The burn was immediate and comprehensive: mouth, throat, stomach, and sometimes your dignity, as you tried not to cough like a first-timer. But it was cheap, usually 5 to 15 cents a shot, and after the first one, the rest went down easier. Mostly because your taste buds had surrendered. Beer was available too, but don't expect anything resembling modern craft brewing. Most saloons served warm beer, refrigeration didn't exist out here, and warm is being kind. Room temperature in a wooden building under the desert sun meant you were drinking liquid bread that had been sitting in a barrel for weeks, possibly months. It was flat, yeasty, and had a flavour profile best described as vaguely beer-adjacent. Some saloons made their own beer, others imported it from breweries in larger cities, which meant it spent weeks in transit, getting warmer and funkier with every mile. By the time it reached your glass, it had developed character. Not good character, but character nonetheless. And that glass, hope you're not picky about cleanliness. Most saloons had a bucket of water behind the bar for rinsing glasses between customers. One bucket for all the glasses, all day. You weren't getting sanitation, you were getting symbolic effort. But here's the thing, nobody complained. You weren't here for a fine dining experience. You were here to get drunk enough to forget that you'd spent 12 hours in a saddle, that your prospects were grim, and that tomorrow you'd wake up and do it all over again. The whiskey did its job, even if that job occasionally included mild poisoning. So you'd order your shot, slam it down, and order another. Because in the Wild West, quality was a luxury. Quantity and effect, those were necessities. You've got your drink. Now what? You look around for somewhere to sit, and your options are limited and mostly uncomfortable. The saloon isn't designed for luxury. It's designed for maximum occupancy and minimum furniture damage. Most saloons have a collection of mismatched tables and chairs scattered around the main room. The tables are rough wood, unvarnished, and covered in carved initials, knife marks, and mysterious stains that have achieved permanent status. Some wobble. All of them are sticky. The chairs are equally rough. Ladder backs, stools, benches, and about half of them have structural issues that make sitting down a calculated risk. You pick a table, hoping it's far enough from the door to avoid the constant dust and noise, but close enough to see who's coming in. In a saloon, positioning matters. You don't sit with your back to the door unless you're suicidal or supremely confident in your ability to read a room through your shoulder blades. You want to see faces, watch hands, and know when trouble is brewing before it reaches your table. Around you, the crowd is a cross-section of frontier life. Cowboys still dusty from the trail, miners with hands stained black from ore, gamblers in slightly cleaner clothes trying to look prosperous, drifters who haven't bathed in a month, and the occasional businessman who wandered in either bravely or stupidly. Everyone's armed, everyone's watching everyone else, even when they pretend they're not. The noise level is constant but varies in intensity. Conversations happen in loud voices because there's no point in whispering. The piano is playing, someone's laughing too hard at their own joke, boots are stomping, glasses are clinking, and the general atmosphere is one of controlled chaos. It's not exactly relaxing, but it's human contact. And when you've spent days alone on the range or in a mine shaft, even this counts as socialising. Some tables have card games going, poker mostly, but also faro, monte, and other games of chance where the house usually wins and players occasionally cheat. You can join if you've got money and nerve, but know that these games can turn deadly fast. Men have been shot over accusations of cheating, over bad beats, over absolutely nothing except whiskey and wounded pride. Other tables have groups of men just drinking and talking. Stories get taller with each round. Lies get more elaborate. Everyone's been somewhere more dangerous, shot someone more notorious, or bedded someone more beautiful than the next guy. It's a competition of masculine fiction, and nobody calls anyone out because they're all doing the same thing. And then there are the women. Saloon girls, dance hall workers, prostitutes. Their roles often overlapped. They're here to encourage drinking, dance with customers for a fee, and sometimes offer other services upstairs or in back rooms. They're wearing the brightest, most revealing clothes in the room, their faces painted with rouge and powder, and they move through the crowd with practiced smiles and watchful eyes. They're working, always working, and they're tougher than half the men in the room, even if nobody wants to admit it. You might buy one a drink, which costs you double what your drink cost, and she gets tea or watered-down whiskey, while you get charged for champagne. She'll sit with you, laugh at your jokes, and make you feel like you're the most interesting man in the territory. For as long as you're paying. When the money runs out, so does the attention. This is the social ecosystem of the saloon. Temporary, transactional, and occasionally violent. But it's also the only place in town where people gather, where news spreads, where loneliness gets temporarily forgotten. You're not here to make friends, but you're here to not be alone. And in the Wild West, that's worth the price of admission. In one corner of the saloon, there's usually a piano. It's battered, out of tune, and missing a few keys, but someone's playing it anyway. The pianist is either a talented musician who fell on hard times, or someone who knows 3 songs and plays them on rotation until somebody pays him to stop. Either way, the music is constant, mechanical, and just loud enough to cover the awkward silences between arguments. The repertoire is predictable. Buffalo Gals, Oh, Susanna, Camptown Races, and other songs everyone knows but nobody admits to loving. The pianist doesn't take requests unless you're paying generously, and even then, he might just play the same song slightly faster and pretend it's different. Nobody's really listening. The piano is background noise, like the creaking floorboards or the distant sound of someone being sick in the alley. But when it stops, everyone notices. The silence is uncomfortable, suspicious. Why did the music stop? Is something about to happen? Did someone die? So the pianist keeps playing, fingers moving over yellowed keys, contributing to the atmosphere of controlled chaos that defines every saloon. Occasionally, someone drunk and sentimental will start singing along. Others might join in, creating a brief moment of communal participation that feels almost wholesome until you remember where you are and what everyone's drinking. These moments don't last. Someone forgets the words, someone else passes out mid-verse, and the moment collapses back into individual isolation. The piano player is paid poorly, tipped occasionally, and ignored constantly. But he keeps playing because the alternative is silence, and silence in a saloon means the owner isn't making money. So the music continues, slightly off-key, slightly repetitive, and absolutely essential to the saloon's identity. And sometimes, late at night when most of the crowd has stumbled home or passed out at tables, the pianist plays something beautiful, something quiet and sad that nobody asked for. The few remaining customers don't acknowledge it, but they listen. Because even in this rough, violent, desperate place, sometimes beauty sneaks in through the cracks. You've been drinking for an hour, maybe two. The whiskey is doing its job. You're warm, loose, and your earlier problems seem distant and unimportant. Around you, the crowd is getting louder, bolder, and sloppier. This is when things can go very wrong very quickly. Saloon fights are common, not daily, but frequent enough that nobody's surprised when one breaks out. The triggers are predictable. Accusations of cheating at cards, insults about someone's mother or horse, sometimes in that order, disputes over women, old grudges remembered through whiskey-coloured glasses, or sometimes just because two men locked eyes at the wrong moment and decided this was happening now. It starts with raised voices. Someone stands up too fast, knocking over a chair. Someone else takes a step forward. The room goes quiet for exactly 2 seconds. That's your warning. Then someone throws the first punch and the saloon erupts. If you're lucky, the fight stays between two people. They grapple, swing wildly, knock over drinks, and eventually one of them goes down, or the barkeep breaks it up with threats, or a shotgun blast into the ceiling. If you're unlucky, the fight spreads. Allies jump in, old enemies see opportunities, and suddenly half the room is involved in a brawl that nobody can remember starting. Furniture becomes weapons. Chairs get broken over backs. Bottles get thrown or smashed to create improvised knives. Tables get overturned for barricades. The piano player keeps playing, because stopping would be admitting defeat. And then there's the real danger: guns. Most saloon fights are fists and fury, but when someone's drunk, angry and armed, things escalate. A punch becomes a knife becomes a gun. And suddenly what was a stupid argument about poker is a shooting that leaves someone bleeding out on the sawdust, while everyone else backs away slowly, trying to remember they didn't see anything. The barkeep has rules about violence. Small fights are tolerated. They're practically entertainment. Big fights that damage property get shut down fast. Guns drawn inside the saloon usually result in everyone involved getting banned, arrested, or shot by the barkeep himself, depending on his mood and the law's availability. If you're smart, when a fight breaks out, you move to the walls, keep your hands visible, and don't make eye contact with anyone looking for a target. You protect your drink if you can, your face if you can't, and you wait it out, because these things end eventually, either with someone unconscious, someone apologising, or someone dead. After the fight, the saloon returns to normal with remarkable speed. Bodies get dragged out, broken furniture gets stacked, the barkeep charges someone for damages, and within 10 minutes, the piano's playing again, the drinks are flowing, and everyone's pretending nothing happened. Because this is the Wild West. Violence isn't an aberration. It's part of the atmosphere, like the smoke and the smell. You accept it the way you accept warm beer and questionable whiskey. It's just another element of the experience, and tomorrow when you wake up with a black eye and a headache, you won't remember who hit you or why, But you'll remember the saloon. And chances are you'll go back. Most saloons aren't just one room with a bar. If the owner is ambitious or the town is big enough, there's more happening beyond those swinging doors. Upstairs or in back rooms, business continues, and it's often more profitable than the alcohol. Gambling is huge. Poker tables run constantly, with dealers who may or may not be honest and players who range from skilled professionals to drunk cowboys convinced their luck is about to change. The house takes a cut of every pot, and the games continue until someone runs out of money, patience, or consciousness. Faro is popular too, a simple betting game where the odds favour the house so heavily that winning feels like divine intervention. These games are serious. Men bet their wages, their horses, sometimes their claims, or land deeds. Fortunes change hands across felt-covered tables, and the atmosphere around gambling tables is tense even when everyone's pretending to be relaxed. Cheating is common. Accusations of cheating are even more common, and the line between the two often comes down to who's more convincing or better armed. Then there's the upstairs. In many saloons, the second floor is where the soiled doves work, prostitutes who rent rooms from the saloon owner and split their earnings. These women have hard lives in a hard place. They're often young, sometimes by choice, but more often by circumstance, desperation, or coercion. They serve miners, cowboys, drifters, anyone with money and needs. The rooms are small, sparsely furnished, a bed, maybe a washstand, a lamp. Privacy is minimal. Walls are thin, and noise travels. The women work long hours, face constant health risks in an era before antibiotics or safe practices, and save what money they can in hopes of someday leaving this life behind. Most don't make it out. The saloon owner profits from everything. Rent from the women, percentage from the gambling, markup on the drinks, fees for music and entertainment. A successful saloon is a small empire of vice, and the owner sits at the centre, collecting from every revenue stream. There might also be private rooms for high-stakes games or meetings that need discretion. Occasionally, these rooms host illegal activities beyond gambling and prostitution, planning robberies, dividing stolen goods, negotiating bribes with corrupt officials. The saloon becomes a neutral ground where business of all kinds gets conducted, because law enforcement in frontier towns is often minimal, corrupt, or simply looking the other way. And through it all, the barkeep watches. He knows who's winning, who's losing, who's making deals, and who's making trouble. He doesn't judge. Judgment is bad for business. He just keeps pouring drinks, keeping order, and making sure the money keeps flowing. The saloon isn't just a bar, it's the economic and social hub of the town, the place where fortunes are made and lost, where loneliness is temporarily cured, and where the wild in Wild West comes most vividly to life. Eventually, the night ends. Or more accurately, you end. You've drunk enough rotgut to pickle your liver, maybe thrown a punch or taken one, possibly lost money you couldn't afford to lose, and definitely spent hours in a smoky room with questionable company. Now it's time to leave, which presents its own challenges. If you're lucky, you're still walking. Your legs wobble, your vision's blurry, and the swinging doors seem farther away than physics should allow. But you make it outside into the night air. The sudden temperature change hits you. Desert nights get cold fast, and you stand there, swaying slightly, trying to remember where you left your horse. Hopefully it's still there. Horse theft is common, and drunks make easy targets. If you're unlucky, you're being carried out, either by friends who've decided you've had enough, or by the barkeep who's tired of watching you drool on his furniture. You get deposited in the street, the dirt, the alley, wherever seems convenient. You'll sleep there, probably get robbed, and wake up at dawn with your face in the dust, no money, and a headache that feels like divine punishment. The street outside is quieter now, but not silent. Other drunks stumble past. Horses shift at hitching posts. Somewhere a dog barks. The saloon behind you is still lit, still noisy, because it never really closes. It just cycles through customers until sunrise makes continuing shameful. You look back at those swinging doors one more time. Despite everything, the smell, the violence, the overpriced drinks, the constant threat of getting shot over nothing, you know you'll be back, because the saloon is the only place in this dusty, desperate town where life happens, where stories are told and lies are believed, where loneliness gets drowned in cheap whiskey and cheaper company. You'll be back tomorrow, or the next day, or whenever you've got a few coins in your pocket and the silence of your life gets too loud to bear. So what was it really like to visit a Wild West saloon? Nothing like the movies, that's for certain. It wasn't glamorous gunfights. At high noon or heroic cowboys defending honour with perfectly aimed shots. It was sticky floors, warm beer, dangerous men, desperate women, and the constant awareness that violence was always one wrong word away. It was sensory overload, the smell of unwashed bodies and tobacco, the sound of off-key piano and raised voices, the taste of whiskey that burned like punishment, the feel of rough wood and rougher company. It was humanity at its most raw and unfiltered, compressed into rooms that smelled like regret and sounded like chaos, but it was also community of a sort. In towns where people lived isolated, brutal lives, the saloon was where they came together, where cowboys fresh off the trail could hear news from other territories, where miners could celebrate a strike or drown the sorrow of another dry claim, where gamblers could test their luck and liars could test their stories, where lonely men could pay for the illusion of companionship and violent men could find worthy opponents. The saloon was the beating heart of the Wild West, pumping whiskey through the veins of civilization's rough draft. It was where fortunes changed hands, where reputations were made and destroyed, where justice was sometimes served and often ignored. It was dirty, dangerous, and absolutely essential. Those swinging doors separated the wilderness from something resembling society. Inside, there were rules, unwritten, flexible, and enforced by whoever was strongest or most sober. Outside, there was nothing but dust, distance, and the law of survival. So when you imagine the Wild West, don't picture the sanitized Hollywood version. Picture the real thing. A dim room filled with smoke and noise, where desperate people made desperate choices, where violence was commonplace, and death was always a possibility, where the whiskey was terrible but necessary, the company was questionable but human, and the experience was miserable but unforgettable. Because visiting a Wild West saloon wasn't entertainment. It was survival with a soundtrack. And for the men and women who pushed through those swinging doors night after night, it was the closest thing to home they'd ever know.